So about a year ago, I went to Mexico City, where I'd received some funding to do to make some work for 3 months, and I went with a friend of mine called Scott from Glasgow as well, and we were actually a little bit apprehensive about going there, even though I'd wanted to for a long time, because of all the kind of horror stories you hear about the gangs and the drug wars and the kind of murders that go on. It's one of the most violent places in the whole world, particularly around the borders. And it was also at the time that the 43 students had just gone missing, and there was huge uprisings, mostly peaceful, across the country about the injustice and holding the government accountable for what happened. So, we'd been kind of researching all these things, and coming across sort of all these horror stories. But actually, when we got to Mexico City, I was really taken aback about how comfortable and safe I felt there in the beginning. And I think a lot of it, I'm sure, had to do with the fact that, one, we were staying in a kind of wealthy area, wealthy Mexicans and Europeans living there. But also, the architecture is somehow so familiar. It's really European. Of course, because the Spanish colonized it and built so much of Mexico City and the kind of other big towns in Mexico. And sometimes you feel like you're really walking down a street in Barcelona, sometimes even Berlin. And it's very strange, that feeling that it's so far away, and the movement of the people is so different to Europe, but somehow it retains that familiarity. So about halfway through the trip, a friend of ours came down from Los Angeles to visit, and we'd organised to hire a car at the airport, to pick him up at the airport, hire a car, and take a drive about 8 hours north of Mexico City to visit some sites, some tourist sites there. We set off from the airport in the hire car. He was driving, and we stopped about 4 hours in to eat at a sort of Mexican-style truck stop, I guess. Lots of small restaurants. We parked the car down the way and walked up to the restaurant, sat down, ate a meal. It's my American friend's first time in Mexico, and so this was his first sort of taste of real Mexican cuisine. Anyway, so we ate and we left, and about 3 hours later realised we'd taken the wrong road, and it was really getting dark now. And we sort of eventually were able to navigate our way back onto the original road, but by this time it was really quite late, and as we were driving through the forest, fog had begun to come down really quite heavily, to the point where we could only see a few meters in front, and it was actually quite scary, quite scary by this point. And we hadn't seen any cars for a while, and the towns that we'd driven through were quite small, and by this point I think we were sure that we were on the right road, but it was still nerve-wracking. Anyway, so after about an hour, and we hadn't seen anything for a while, we kind of see a sign to say that we're approaching into this town, and as we drive in, there's sort of a police checkpoint stopping us. And we sort of stop the car, and these guys have got these really, really big guns, The police there all carry these kind of massive guns. And from all accounts that we'd heard from people that we'd met while we were there, the police in Mexico are pretty rough, and we were easy fodder for these guys, because we were lost and hardly spoke any Spanish. And in fact, my friend Sam from America tried to speak to them in kind of American, and he was like, "Excuse me, officer, I'm so sorry, and what can I help you with?" And we tried to let's try and speak in Spanish, because we know what the Mexicans think of the Americans anyway. So they sort of signal for us with the guns, with pointing their guns at us to get out the car. So we get out the car, and one of them again with the gun signals to the boot for us to open the boot. And we say, we've only got our bags in there. There's nothing in there. And I was pretty scared at this point. And it was actually quite cold as well. So Sam goes and opens up the boot, and our bags weren't. None of our bags were there. Our bags were gone, and all that was left was all that was there was a pistol, just a pistol sitting in the back of our trunk, and our bags had gone. And obviously, I was, for one, terrified, and two, worried, because everything that I had was in these bags, everything that all of us had were in these bags. And the only time that I could think that anyone could have taken them was when we'd stopped for the food. So, we were really panicking, also trying to explain that this pistol wasn't our pistol, that none of us carry a gun. And the guy kept on asking us for money. Otherwise, he was going to take us to the prison and take us to the local jail. So between us, we had about 2,000 pesos. Openly had that much, which is about £100, and we gave it to him, and they kind of drove us on, and we sort of drove on in complete silence, really quite unnerved, I think would probably be the best word to describe how we felt, and none of us could really talk to one another because we were so unnerved and scared, and it was still really dark, and there was still lots of fog, and in the distance we saw a gas station really brightly lit, and we'd drive in there, and we'd sit, and we'd park the car, and we sit still in silence, and eventually Sam suggests that we go and get a coffee, so the three of us leave together to go and get a coffee from inside the shop, and we go into the shop, and we kind of have some loose change left, and we go and buy the coffees and come back out, and Sam suggests that we look in the back of the car just to look, and I really terrified. I didn't want to look because I just actually wanted to leave the country straight away and just go back home. And anyway, we opened up the boot, and the gun had gone, and our bags were there, and I kind of looked around at the others to think that maybe I'd made all this up, or like had imagined it or something, but they had exactly kind of the same expression that I imagine I had on my face, which was absolutely kind of just very strange. It was just very strange.